All right, we got 3 new toys to play with and review today from one of my favorite calisthenics equipment companies, PullUpDip.com. First up is their official PullUpDip.com dip belt. And this is something that I was excited to get my hands on because I've been using my ISO loop for a primary dip belt, which works pretty well, but it's not nearly as functionally purpose-built as an actual dip belt, which, as you can see, is a lot thicker and a lot broader. The extra padding here on the lumbar area is much more comfortable, and it's a lot more versatile and easier to change out due to the chain and carabiners. The thing I've come to recognize about PullUpDip.com is they're a company that builds classic, basic calisthenics equipment, but they put their own little spin on things to refine it and bring it to that extra little level, and that's very obvious here in the dip belt. It's the extra padding and the curvature on each end. This gives a little bit more comfort as the dip belt is saddling against your hips or as it comes in towards the weight that you're holding on to. And it avoids some of that little bit of a pinching motion and makes the belt a little bit longer. I've used dip belts in the past that are a little too short, and as a result, the chain is putting some sort of pressure against my inner thigh and not as comfortable as it could be. This really helps with that little extra bit of comfort, and anything that makes you more comfortable when you're doing the exercise will allow you to put more effort into the muscles that are doing the exercise rather than dealing with the discomfort of using the equipment. I also appreciate the use of these carabiners. They're nothing crazy special, but a lot of times on dip belts, you find the classic hardware store style carabiner, which works pretty well, but when you have it open, it does have a few of these little sharp edges that I've actually cut myself on a couple of times, especially if I have a very heavy load on the belt, and it's not the most ergonomic way to go about it. These are a little bit more like a classic climbing carabiner, a lot easier, quicker to adjust, and a little bit more ergonomic, so they are a little bit better than the classic old school hardware store carabiner. Finally, the chain is certainly a standard chain. There's not any real special qualities about it, but it is long enough that it will accommodate whatever you're trying to hold, or you can double loop it so it holds the weight a little bit closer to your center of gravity, gives you a little bit more control over it. Overall, a very well-made dip belt, and I highly recommend it. Next up, we have these PullUpDip.com push-up handles. And as many of you know, I'm not the biggest fan of push-up handles. I'm much more of a supporter of keeping your hands flat on the floor if you can, injuries to the wrists and stuff notwithstanding, or if you don't need to get elevated, like if you're doing something like an L-sit. But nonetheless, these are a useful tool, and a couple of the qualities that I really like about these is, one is their one-piece metal design. They don't have a lot of pieces that are kind of glued or bolted together, so you're not going to have any sort of rattling parts or creaking and sagging. It's a very, very solid handle, especially when you have these little rubber pads on the bottom, and it came with a couple of replacement pads in case they should ever get scraped off for whatever reason. So it's safe for hardwood floors and extremely stable. There's no rocking around and feeling like it's going to tip over on you. Very supportive base. But the thing that I really appreciate about these is that the handle itself is not just a classic round tube-like handle, but instead is a very smooth, well-designed wooden handle that has a little bit more depth to it. It's not exactly a perfect oval. It's a little bit narrower on the bottom than it is on the top, so it has a really good ergonomic feel in the hand, so it doesn't put too much pressure right in the center while your fingers are just kind of loose and hanging there, which has always been a gripe of mine with classic push-up handles. Instead, it allows you to have a full supportive pressure on the entire hand as you're holding yourself up. It's also got 2 screws on each end, so you can be sure that it's not going to loosen up over time and start rotating and twisting in your hand. Overall, one of the most solid, best ergonomic, and well-made push-up handles I have ever come across. And then finally, we have their doorway pull-up bar. And at first glance, it looks like a classic general run-of-the-mill pull-up bar that doesn't really have anything special about it, but the beauty is in the detail. First notable is that it is an extra wide supportive base. I've used doorway pull-up bars in a couple of friends' homes or clients that I'm training. Sometimes those classic pads just barely fit in the doorway, doesn't exactly give a lot of confidence in the use of it. This sucker will fit in even the widest doorways that I've come across. It also is an elevated handle system, which means that instead of hanging from below the doorway and giving you less range of motion, as classic doorway pull-up bars usually do, so you have to bend your knees in order to get a good hang or a stretch in your arms, this elevates the actual pull-up handles well above the door frame, so you can get a pretty good hang. I'm 5'10" myself, and in most doorways, as long as I keep my shoulders packed, I can bring my legs all the way down underneath me and keep my legs straight. And then the third notable feature is they've installed this little ring in the bottom here, which is very handy for attaching bands, suspension exercise equipment like a TRX or something. And this is one of the things I have kind of mixed emotions about, because on one hand, it's a neat little feature and it makes it quick and easy to just clip on a band or something, so you're not having to wrap things around, and it's quick, easy on and easy off. But on the other hand, it does kind of just present something that's in the way if you're not using it. Because a lot of progressive calisthenics techniques sometimes involve using one hand or kind of more weight on one arm, so you want to grab more in the middle of the bar, and that makes that really difficult and cumbersome because this ring is here and it's welded on. I can't move it or remove it, so in some cases you may find that this is a handy feature. Other cases, that might just be something that feels like it's in the way. But then again, that's kind of a bit of a gripe of mine with doorway pull-up bars in general, because they always have these neutral grips here, and they've got dedicated padded grips, and these pads feel very strong, sturdy. They're not rotating. But what I'd really like to see is if someone could ever design a pull-up bar that was just a simple, pure, straight bar. It didn't have the different grips and features to it, because you can attach handles and other accessories to a simple bar and turn it into anything you want. But once you have dedicated grips, you do have the feature of the grips, but you're also kind of limiting the versatility of the unit. But nonetheless, as doorway pull-up bars go, it's strong, it's sturdy, it gets the job done, and it certainly gives you a lot more of that full stretch, classic pull-up feel compared to other pull-up bars that just hang below the doorway and can feel a little bit more limited. So as always, the link to PullUpDip.com is down below, as well as a 10% discount code that you can apply to these products and more. And let me know if you have any further questions in the comments section. You can find more review of their products in these videos here. Thank you very much for watching. Be fit and live free.